Good morning. Today is the 11th day of Tishrei. I have no idea what it is in maybe 24th, 24th.
No, it's not.
24th of September. 26th of September? Wow. Okay. So what we're doing is we're going to be learning the Maimarim that the Rebbe Rayat said, the 6th Rebbe, said were influential Maimarim that the Rashabit taught. And we're going to start with the first one on his list.
This is the one that you used to clean the air?
No. Not the same one. Bטרוניא and בריותיו. In Avodah Zarah, it says, God does not come to his creations with demands that they can't meet. Bטרוניא is like, I'm going to ask you to do this, and then I'm going to ask you to do this, and it's all beyond your means. You can't possibly fulfill it all.
Sure.
Bטרוניא is like, it's more than that. It's almost like entrapment. Bטרוניא is very close to entrapment. Yeah. What?
That's what we used to say about the Rebbe. Always asking more and more and more.
But it's not entrapment. It's not like I'm not setting you up. I'm asking you for things that you can do. The fact that you don't want to do it, that's something else. But it's not things that cannot be done. From this, by the way, he taught on Simchas Torah in the shul after taking mashke. Oh, that's why I like the first line. Okay, it's all three things together: Simchas Torah, shul, and some mashke. From this we know that the Torah and mitzvot that God gave the Jewish people is not beyond their capacity, not beyond their means.
He
said it in Yiddish. I'm almost sure. He said it in Yiddish, and they wrote it down in Hebrew. Like they wrote down all the Maimarim. Maimarim were never written down in Yiddish. Always translated into Hebrew. What the main reason for that is? No, Maimarim in Yiddish. Somebody wrote it down, but Maimarim that were published were always in Hebrew. The main reason for it is because when they prepared, there was a written copy that they prepared before they said it. It was always in Hebrew. They never wrote in Yiddish, as far as I know. דאגן דתורה ומצוות לקיים כדבעי למהווה היא עבודה עצומה. Even though it is a monumental task to keep Torah and mitzvot properly, מכל מקום ניתן לישראל לקיימם דווקא. Still, this task was given to the Jewish people, Nishmot Israel, the Dafka Nishmot Israel, that specifically the souls of Israel, יש בהם כוח זה לקיים המצוות, מפני הכוח למסירות נפש שיש בנשמות ישראל, because of the power of self-sacrifice, or self-annulment, self-abnegation, as they say a lot of times. But here it's sacrifice. We'll see in a moment. So first of all, this is a very interesting. Somebody pointed my attention at the fact that there's a very, seemingly on the surface, I think he's very right, deviation or change from the previous Rebbe's to the Rebbe. And, well, I said that incorrectly. Between the Tanya and the Rebbe. The Tanya never talks about the crown. Doesn't mention it even once. The only time he mentions it is in chapter 3, and there it's in relation to the Tumah. It's actually to Sarak Tarin de Masavuta. He always starts from Chokhmah. And the reason it's always given is because the Tanya is talking about work that leads to conscious change, not work that is beyond one's self understanding or ability to integrate Torah mitzvahs.
Leaves out the mystical, gets down to the practical.
So I don't know if I would say mystical. I would say what is not conscious, he doesn't talk about.
It's mystical.
Mystical could be anything that's beyond your experience. Chokhmah is also at some level, but okay, I'll accept nitpicking. In any case, but the Rebbe was all about Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh is the keter, meaning he completely changed the mode of work in the Tanya to a mode of work that's entirely based on self-sacrifice. And I know that he wasn't the first to do this, but here's one example. The Rebbe Rashav is doing the same thing. He's saying, we're not suited to the Torah and mitzvos because of our wonderful chokhmah, the neshama itself, but because of the power of self-sacrifice. I think, let's see if he holds by this as we continue to work through this maimer. V'yesh lomar b'derech hafshar, and we might say, right, this is usually the chiddush. When you say v'yesh lomar, right, when you say perhaps, it means that this is his main chiddush in this maimer right now. And b'derech hafshar, as a possibility, that this is what the verse that says lo merubchem mikol ha'amim bachar Hashem lokechem b'chem ki atem ha'me'at mikol ha'amim, that God did not choose you because of your numbers, as it were. Merubchem is like how many you are, that you're so great, but it's always, I already translated it as not numerous but rather great, meaning that on the revealed side you're great. Because you are the least of all nations. And what do we mean by least? You can mean numeral, meaning in terms of numbers. It also could mean in another sense, maybe in the sense of the powers of the soul. That you're actually, you lessen yourselves. Okay? That's the way it's usually understood. פירוש, מה שניתן לכם התורה ומצוות לא מרובכם מכל העמים, פירוש לא מפני הכוחות פנימיים שלכם. This is exactly what we just said. It's not because of your, like you said, not because of your numbers, but because of your quality. But here he goes a step further. That's why quality doesn't fit here. It's not, Rubchem here he says, refers to how you are internally, what we call the inner faculties. What are the inner faculties? Inner faculties are the sfirot, basically. Basically, that's the way we call it. Sechel umidot, intellect and character. What's not internal? The levushim. Levushim are external. The garments. Machshava, dibur, ma'isa. No, midos is different from levushim. Completely different. Midos is your character. It's your emotional traits, your emotional faculties. And we have, usually in Chasidut, 6 levels. Ratzon is the highest. Will. What you will. Above that, there's also Tanug, but it's usually not counted in this particular model. Okay, so there's Ratzon is the highest. It's the least changing. It's the one that's most permanent. Then you have Sechel, the intellect, what I understand, not what I'm thinking, what I understand. So, usual explanation is, I always understand that 1 + 1 = 2. I can't understand 1 + 1 = 3. That's what my intellect tells me. It's very slow to change. You could prove to me maybe that 1 + 1 = 3, but it would take me a long, long time to change my intuitive understanding about that statement, 1 + 1. Okay? Then I have the emotional faculties, my character. That also is relatively permanent. It changes over life, but very slowly. And then we have externally 3 levels, thought, speech, and action, which are the garments, and they change all the time. The least changes is the thought, or someone would say it changes the quickest, but you don't think that much. But you can do many, many, many things during the day, and you switch from one to the other, and there's no problem. Right? Okay. So these are the levels. He says it's not because of the internal faculties, it's not because of the intellect and the emotions, not because of the intellect and the character. The gam, meaning that you have more intellect or you have a different intellect and character than other nations. The gam hanefesh hasichlit shebenishmot Yisrael umipnei adam shebemerkava, because even what we call the intellectual soul in the Jewish people comes from where? From the divine chariot. The divine chariot had 4 angels in it. One looked like a human, one looked like an ox, one looked like an eagle, one looked like a lion. So the intellectual soul comes from the angel that looks like a human. No! Yaakov Avinu is sitting on top. the figure of a human, that's the form of a human that's sitting on the chariot and being driven by it, that's the divine soul. That's not the intellectual soul. And that's what they say it looks like Yaakov. Okay?
How is it on the chariot is the face of Yaakov?
On the chariot. But the angels that are running the chariot, meaning they're like the wheels, they're the engine, they're the whole thing that's moving it, those relate to either the animal soul or the intellectual soul. Now, I would think that maybe the intellectual soul is coming from where? From the divine soul. He says, no. It's coming from the angels. It's a more natural appearance, meaning the human intellectual soul is not very unlike the ox's animal soul. Not because they're similar in their function, but because they're similar in their origin. They constitute a vehicle on which everything else rests. They're not the final goal, the final purpose of being human. And to have an intellectual soul is very nice. You need to have it. You should have it. You should develop it. And as we'll see in a moment, he says something that for a lot of Lubavitchers is a big chiddush, but we'll see it in a second. I did read a little bit ahead. Intellectual soul is just a basis on which the human rests. You can't be a human if you have no intellect. Are not the same thing. Intellectual soul is something that's run by logic, common sense. And as we'll see in a moment, non-Jews have it also. There's no difference. I can read science and nature magazines weekly, and my intellectual soul becomes stronger and stronger. I can read Homer, and I can read Plato and Aristotle, and becomes stronger. And I have language to understand what Torah says. That's what the intellectual soul is. The divine soul is Torah, something entirely different. It's a completely different look at the world. I'm not looking at it through common sense. Common sense doesn't say I should have just fasted for 26 hours. There's no reason for it. It's not dictated by common sense. No goy in his right mind will do it.
All that intellectual stuff that you just said destroys your ability to understand.
Depends how you learn it.
Messes your mind up.
It depends how you learn it. You can't, in fact, I would argue that somebody who doesn't understand a lot of the basics can't understand the whole philosophical discussion, the Kabbalistic discussion, and the Hasidic discussion. You can't understand, because if you don't know what the final cause in Aristotle is, you can't understand half of what people write, because everybody's thinking in causes. Everybody's thinking in what we call humors from Galen. This is the language. Chazal adopted it. They circumcised it. They made it into Torah. The Rambam puts it in his halachos. But it's still, that's where the origin is. If you don't understand it properly, very hard to understand it from our books. Usually you have to go back and read other things in order to understand it properly. I'm now breaking my teeth over Ramak, Moshe Cordovero. He has a book that I didn't learn. What? Yeah. Chewing it. It's hard chewing. There's a book called Eilima, which is this is his Kabbalistic book. I never learned it. I saw bits and pieces of it from time to time. There he builds a whole right, and he has a whole because he takes the same ideas and he develops them further. Once you read the Eilima, you see that there is a lot more continuity between the early Kabbalah and the Arizal. So he has a whole 40 pages, 50 pages on kavanos of davening. Not necessarily of davening, also davening, but he has a whole structure of kavanos, which I was not familiar with. I didn't know that he had this. It's interesting to see how he tackled the same questions. He had different answers. In any case. So getting back to this. So it's not because of your internal faculties, your intellect and your character. And by the way, he's doing here something very interesting. He's saying your sechel is your nefesh. He's not saying your sechel is your nefesh elokit. He's not saying it's your divine soul. Okay? Your intellect is everybody has intellect and character. No, your intellect. Could be that it's not common sense. It's your intellect. You studied it. It's not because it's common. People wouldn't know it. But I'm just saying that he's not identifying seichel midot. Usually, when we talk about seichel midot in Chasidus, it's not clear. Are we talking about the divine side of man, or are we talking about the regular side? And here it's very clear. He's talking about the nefesh sechlit. Sechel is nefesh sechlit. And the next line is, the gam nefesh sechlit shebenishmot Yisrael hu mipnei adam shebemerkava. And here he quotes two things from the Tzemach Tzedek. I wasn't able to find them in a minute, so I don't know where they are. לפני אדם שבמרכבה ממנו נמשכים נפש השכלית לנשמות ישראל וחסידי אומות העולם. And this is the same source that Jews get their intellectual soul, this image, this angel with the face of a man in the divine chariot, and Chasidei Umot HaOlam, and the righteous among the nations. Okay? What does it mean that he's righteous among the nations? What does it mean? So ostensibly it means, very simply, he keeps the 7 mitzvahs. He doesn't steal, he doesn't murder, he doesn't commit adultery. He's an upstanding person. I'd say, I don't know, discounting the adultery, I don't know how the adultery would work, but I would say probably 40-50% of the Western world, I'm guessing, would count as Chasidei Umot HaOlam today. That they have a nefesh sechlit. But again, the whole idea is, nefesh sechlit says it's common sense not to cheat on your wife. It's common sense. You don't have to have a Torah for that. You understand that the bond between a man and a woman is sacred. You don't have to say it was done before God or anything like that. It's what it means that we trust each other. It's a very simple thing. ולבד זה, הרי כל אחד ואחד מישראל יש לו נפש האלוקית. Apart from all this, if we weren't sure until now he says, apart from our sechel umidot, apart from our intellectual soul, our intellect, our character, our emotions, every Jew also has a divine soul. ששורשו מבחינת האדם העליון שעל הכיסא. And that its source is from the form of the man that Ezekiel sees is being driven on the chariot. He's the rider. He's the master here. The chariot is only supporting him. It's only serving him. ומבואר בספר שבעינונים בתחילתו, שהוא עניין השכל ומידות הקדושה. And here he says, you have to say particularly, explicitly, that when you're talking about sechel midos, when you're talking about the intellect and the character, you have to say, am I talking about the sechel midos, the intellect and character of the animal soul, or am I talking about the intellect and the midos, the character of the divine soul? He says in the beginning of Tanya, there he's talking about sechel midot kedusha. Where is this? What chapter? Chapter 3 and 4. And 5 also a little bit. So 3, 4, 5, that's where he talks about the difference between the intellect, the character, and after that, mostly in chapter 4 and 5, but 3 is where he talks about this the most. He talks about the garments, why they're a lower level on the one hand, on the other hand, they're sometimes considered to be a higher level. the nefesh elokit b'chinat mochin chabad v'yetzer tov ובחינת המידות הנולדים מהשכל שכבר נצטיירו בציור מידה. What is the divine soul? It's the Chabad and Yetzer Tov. Sorry, it's the Chabad. It's a very important thing. We hear a lot in the early discussion of ethics, let's call it, of psychology, Jewish psychology, talking about from the time of the sages. We hear a lot of discussion about Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Ra. We don't hear so much, or even not at all, about Nefesh. We almost don't hear the word psyche. From time to time we hear it, because Solomon used it, David used it. The word was known, Nefesh. The Nefesh meant more like will. It wasn't like a force in the person. And from the Middle Ages and on, especially in Chasidus, the language began to change. We began to speak more and more about Nefesh. Until we get to, in the Arizal, this discussion of Nefesh Elokit, a divine soul, an animal soul. Animal soul existed a long time before, but divine soul was something relatively new. And then in Chasidus, everything changes. It becomes all about nefesh, and we hardly hear about yetzer. Yetzer being an inclination, proclivity. So he says here, what's the difference between what we call the nefesh elokit and the yetzer tov? We want some map. What are you referring to? What's the difference? He says, then when I say nefesh elokit, divine soul, I mean the intellect of the divine, the chabad of my divine understanding. When I speak about yetzer tov, I mean the midos. I'm talking about the emotional character traits that always emerge from the understanding that I have. And this we've talked about in the past, that by the nefesh behemis, by the animal soul, it's the opposite. That the intellect grows out of the midos. But in the divine soul, it's the opposite. You first learn Torah, then you learn how to behave, then you develop a character, a Torah-based character. And here we will end, God willing, continue tomorrow.